Hello, everyone. My name is Evan. I'm the developer of Outbreak. I just want to take a couple minutes today to kind of talk about the game and kind of show off some of the different features and give you a bit of background on it as well. Um, I'm going to be streaming this on Twitch, and I do apologize if there is any audio issues. I don't really have a great setup for this, and the microphone isn't going to be super great. It's also my first live stream as well, so. The other thing I'll note is that I've got my puppy next to me here, so if he starts barking, I do apologize for any noise from that as well. And I'll try to mute the mic if that does occur. Um, Alrighty, so let's talk about Outbreak. Outbreak, at its core, is a multiplayer cooperative survival horror game. Um, and there have been plenty of, survival horror games over the last 20 years, and way back further than that as well. And there's been some great recent ones too. There's been Amnesia, there's been Killing Floor, and many other titles like that. When I think of survival horror, though, I usually go back and think of the games from the '90s and from the early 2000s. I'm a big fan of classic Resident Evil games, Silent Hill, Clock Tower, and other games like that. And I've always been kind of enamored with the gameplay mechanics for them, how they're kind of more difficult to use than is probably absolutely necessary, as well as the stories that are being told in areas like that. Um, and we've seen those series kind of evolve into different things over the last couple of years. Well, I guess well over the last 10 years and beyond. But it's very rare to see a game coming out that's recent that still embodies a lot of those classic gameplay motifs. There's certainly games that are still very difficult to play. I mean, its core, Dark Souls could be even called a survival horror game as well, and that would be completely accurate. But there was just something special about those original games, and it's something that I don't really see a lot of when I look at PC games or console games. And it's something that I kind of wanted to sit down and try to make myself. So that's kind of what brought me to creating Outbreak. And at its core, Outbreak is a multiplayer cooperative survival horror game where up to four players can either go through a story-based campaign, or they can fight a wave-based mode where you kind of fight off waves of enemies. As you kill them, you generate credits. You can use your credits to buy different equipment. What makes Outbreak different from a lot of other games in the market is that it's definitely intended to not be a real hand-holding experience. It's meant to be kind of vague in what you're doing. It's meant to be difficult. It punishes you even when you're really not making mistakes sometimes. And it does this through a lot of different, gameplay methodologies. One of the big things that Outbreak has is a very limited inventory. Most characters only have about 4 inventory slots. There's one character who has 6, but it's a very limited amount of space. And every item you pick up in the game takes up 1 inventory slot. So if you pick up a shotgun or a handgun or a box of ammo, that's one slot. There are some things in your inventory that can be obviously combined and can be put into the same slot. Like if you pick up 2 boxes of handgun bullets, under a certain amount, they combine into the same slot, up to a certain point. But it's that kind of inventory management that you really don't see a lot of in games recently, and it's something that really is a lot of what the core difficulty is in Outbreak. It's something where when you realize that you want to hold a weapon, ammo for your weapon, and you want to have a healing item and a puzzle item, that's pretty much your inventory right there. And when you come across a new weapon or when you come across a second puzzle item, you kind of have to begin to make trade-offs and try to determine what is the best way for you to organize your inventory and move forward. When you're alone, it's very difficult because you only will have those 4 or 6 slots. When you bring some friends along, you get to rely on their inventories as well. But at the same time, they have the same needs that you do too. They'll need a weapon, they'll need ammo, they're going to need to heal themselves, and you'll find that their inventories fill up rather rapidly. And that's one of the big drivers of difficulty in this game, is just there's a lot of things you're going to want to pick up, and you really can't. The other driver too is that the game never pauses. In single player or in multiplayer, going into a menu, going into your inventory, checking the lobby status, it never pauses the game. It's always running in real time. And part of the difficulty that comes from that is that the kind of the hook for Outbreak is that sure there's monsters around the scenarios, but there's always a horde of monsters that's hunting you, and they're never going to stop. And you can fight them off for a short while your resources hold up. But even as you defeat them, if you don't keep moving and keep moving forward with your objectives, you'll find that you will eventually get overwhelmed. You'll run out of resources and you'll be killed. And it's something where you can't really camp out a room. You can't really stop moving, um, or you know you will die in this game. Um, and I think that that's one of the key things that really is the motivator for moving, because it's the whole thing where the clock never stops. But I didn't want to have a literal clock on the screen for you that was always just counting down towards some doom state or something like that. I wanted you to have some player agency over what's going to happen to you, even if it's kind of unfair, and even if you really can't fight it off in the long run. Um, so that's kind of the impetus for continuing to move quickly at all times and always moving with a purpose. And that's the other hook that really, as you learn the scenarios, you learn the layouts of where items are and objectives are, it does actually make the game easier. Because although some of the items like ammo and healing items can randomly appear or not appear in certain positions as you play the game and on repeat playthroughs, there'll always be those things that are always in the same spot. Puzzle items, they don't really move. And weapons, they're always usually there for you. You can kind of predict where a weapon's going to be. So uh, that's kind of the difficulty hook for it. And it's just really meant to be more of a classic survival horror experience. The other piece of difficulty that really comes into play here is the controls. Outbreak uses classic tank controls. It's a top-down, two-dimensional game, but the controls translate very well from those classic survival horror games. And tank controls are really great because they provide a barrier between wanting to do something and actually doing that action. It's something where you want to turn and run away, or you want to kind of sidestep an enemy or aim or fire, and it's something where the controls will kind of fight you a little bit. And when it's not a real tense situation, you tend to be able to get away with it pretty well. But it's when suddenly you're getting surrounded by three monsters, you want to do something, you kind of mess up, you really do pay for it in a way. And that was something that I always loved in the Resident Evil games, is that the controls were very straightforward, all things considered, and they were, for me at least, very easy to work with. But it's when things got tense, that's when you would make a mistake, and that level of indirection would kind of get you in the long run. Um, so those are a lot of the main pillars that create difficulty in this game, and why they're kind of why this is a callback to classic survival horror experiences. There's other common tropes, other things in there. It's a dark atmospheric environment. There's scary monsters who are going to come after you, um, you know, and you'll be depowered as a player in a lot of ways because of that. Because you won't be able to see very well. You have a limited inventory, and even the weapons and ammo that you find, you're never going to find them in large amounts. On the easier difficulties, they're fairly frequent in the levels, but if you don't use them effectively, you will run out and you'll get into trouble pretty quickly. So, in a nutshell, that's kind of Outbreak. It's coming out on Steam today. Probably it'll be up, I would say, in an hour or two after this live stream finishes, assuming everything goes according to plan. You'll be seeing a lot of streamers and other review sites picking it up and hopefully running with it and getting some more footage out of that. So I'm not going to have a super in-depth playthrough here. We've also been uploading some videos showing gameplay as well. You can watch the official Steam trailer on the Steam site. And we have a longer Onslaught game mode preview that's about 30 minutes long that went up last night. So I would encourage you to check that out if you'd like to see the other mode besides campaign, which is that more wave-based shooter approach to it. But kind of what I want to do here is just really give a quick walk through the application, show you what the different features are. Some things I'll talk about up front is that a lot of the major Steam functionality is present in this game. You can get trading cards, the emoticons, all of that. There's I believe 39 Steam achievements that are going out today with the game. So there's plenty of those fun Steam integrated features that everyone loves on there. And it should hopefully be a fairly substantial package for folks who are buying in. And we're happy to announce that for the launch week, the game will be at a 30% discount as well. So it's really a great time for you and to grab 2 or 3 friends and jump in and play some Outbreak while it's cheap. Because I think once it goes back up to the full price of $14.99, it's going to be there for a while. So I would certainly encourage you to pick it up while it's on sale. So I think we should jump in and start looking at some of the menus here and talk about the different aspects of the game. a bit more.
Outbreak.
On the main menu, you have a lot of very basic options here, which I'll quickly talk through. The single player mode, you can click on that, and you can go in and play alone. I do want to note that Outbreak is fully playable offline as well. So if you do not have an internet connection, you have like Steam in offline mode, it will work fine. There may be some minor features that are not available, such as your player inventory, but all of the game modes and scenarios are fully playable on that as well. Multiplayer brings you into the multiplayer lobby system where you can create and join games with other players, and we'll take a look at that in a second. But I'm going to go through these other menus kind of first and show what's in here. Um, Outbreak has a considerable amount of stat tracking and achievements with it, as I said earlier. You can use the statistics menu to see how you're doing on the different stats. It records quite a bit of things like the different enemies you kill, successful hits, your onslaught statistics, how many waves you make it in, as well as that. And then the achievement listing is on the right, and you'll see that cute little biohazard icon there when you've achieved that achievement. So this should hopefully make it very easy to stay up to date on how you're doing and see everything that the game kind of offers in terms of stats. There's no leaderboard support right now. That may be added at a future date. These statistics are purely for you personally. Hopping into the options menu here, you're going to see a lot of very similar or common options you'd see in most PC games here. On the left here, you have your player options here. You can set a preferred character for yourself, which is what the game will automatically select in single player. And in multiplayer, it will try to select it for you if that character is available. In multiplayer, everyone has to pick a unique character, so if it's not available, it's going to go ahead and pick you a different one. But you can always put this in here and kind of have that chance of getting the character that you prefer right off the bat. The move and turn option here, that kind of controls your stick dead zone or a button delay. It can be useful for when you're moving and turning so that every little motion or every little push on the D-pad doesn't move you or turn your character, and you can change the level of sensitivity there. The cloud region box is something that's really great. Outbreak's multiplayer uses a cloud-based multiplayer backend service, which means that you should hopefully be able to get a low ping in most places in the world where folks would likely be playing this game. By default, Outbreak will take some time and try to figure out which region would give you the best ping. But you can also override that and pick one of your choosing here. And the reason why you may want to do that is, let's say that you're in the U.S. and you have a friend playing in Europe. You guys will need to end up on the same region to be able to play together because the multiplayer rooms themselves are specific to the region that you're on. So that could be a reason why maybe both parties would want to pick Europe, for example, and you can do that here. And with any of these options, you'll have to hit apply for them to actually apply for each section here. Over in video options, it should be very straightforward. You got your resolution, your image quality, which really affects just the quality of the actual images in the game. If you go down to low, you'll see them degrade pretty significantly. Most other effects aren't touched, though. You got a full screen toggle. You can toggle VSync on or off. If it's on, it tries to lock to 60 frames per second. If it's off, it should be an unlimited frame rate. And brightness may be a little confusing, which is why I want to explain it here. This affects the overall lighting when you're in-game. It doesn't actually affect the image brightness for menus. Outbreak's a very dark game. That's intentional. But based on some monitors, you may need to kick up the brightness a bit to be able to see what you're doing. So we do give you a pretty substantial options there. If you're just not a fan of the darkness either, you can max it out, and the game is much lighter and maybe a little bit easier to play as well. And for audio, you have a global volume setting for the entire game. You can toggle ambience, which tends to be the music, or you can kind of hear the wind blowing in the background here. It toggles that. And you have a volume slider for voice chat. The majority of these options, where they make sense, are also available when you're playing in-game. But as I said earlier, if you go into the options menu in-game, you're not safe. The game does not pause. One other cool thing that I do want to point out is that Outbreak is built from the ground up for gamepads. I'm playing it right now on an Xbox One controller, and it's just designed that the entire UI and the entire gameplay can be handled with a gamepad. It should work very well in big picture mode as well. But we also offer full controller and keyboard customization here. You can go in and reconfigure anything that you'd like. The one caveat is that anywhere that there's a button prompt in game, it's not going to update to your reconfigured controls. So it's kind of going to be on you to keep track of that for now. That could be something that's addressed later on. We just didn't have time before the game came out. All right. And let's just head on back to the main menu. The next area is the story menu. The story of Outbreak is not really told through cutscenes. When you're playing the games, you'll be able to inspect the environment to kind of get an idea of what's going on. You'll find written logs that are left behind from folks before the outbreak occurred, and maybe every now and then one from afterwards. But that's a lot of the way that the story is conveyed. To kind of help summarize a lot of those events, though, the story menu will allow you to do brief walkthroughs of like an introduction and talking about each scenario here and what kind of happened. Each character also has their own introduction as well to kind of understand how they ended up where they were at the beginning of the first scenario. And if you unlock all the scenarios, you'll get some bonus stuff like seeing some early screenshots and a short developer diary that I wrote, kind of talking about why the game was made and how it was made. It's nothing in here is really super meaty. It's just meant to give you a little bit of background on the events of the game. And a lot of this content unlocks as you clear scenarios and fulfill other objectives. And finally, we have the credits menu, which you can check out if you want to see who made the game. So, since the game is not out, and it will hopefully be out in, probably in the next 2 hours if I had to guess, there's nobody to play multiplayer with. But I do want to just hop in quick and talk about it. When you click on the multiplayer menu, it'll spend some time connecting to the network. Your first time, if you're on the best ping setting, it's going to take a little bit longer because it's checking all the other regions for you. It should hopefully save after that, though, and connect quickly for future times, unless you manually change that slider option. Once you've connected to the network here, you're hit with quite a few options here. You can go ahead and create either a public or private server. If it's public, other people will see it appear in this server browser list above that's empty, and they can freely join. If it's private, what you'll want to do is set a custom name for your game in the box to the right there, and then share it with your friends, and they can join you based on the game name. It's kind of like a password. And let's say you have two friends, and they join you, and now you want to fill in that last slot. You can make your game public when it's already started, and someone will hopefully jump in and join you. If you select a game out of the menu up top, you can use Join Server to join the game, or if you know the name of a game, type it in there and hit Join. And if you want to just do some matchmaking, Auto Join Server will just pick one out of the list above and put you there. To filter that list, though, you can change the scenario, the difficulty, and the the minimum amount of players in the game, and hit refresh, and it will go through and find any games that meet those criteria. If nothing meets it, though, it won't show anything. And I'll just create a public game quick. There's nobody to join me here, but you can kind of see some of the options you can change here. Since I'm the host, I can change the scenario, the difficulty, and the character, or in my character, which anybody can do, because that's a character-specific option. You also have some starting equipment here, too. In Outbreak, you're awarded consumable starting equipment based on your playtime. So after playing, we'll say about a half an hour, you might start seeing some equipment popping up in your inventory. And this is equipment that you can pick prior to starting out a game. You can see that I have quite a bit because I've been playing Outbreak for a while now. But these give you kind of like a slight edge when you start out, and maybe you know that you're kind of going to look for achievements and other things like that. You may want to choose to focus on like bringing in a magnum or having everybody start with shotguns, and that could increase your odds. In general, though, it doesn't really unbalance the game because if you end up picking a power weapon out of this menu, it's unlikely you're going to find ammo for it once the game starts, even if you bring along another box of ammo with you. So it is pretty limiting, but it can give you a slight edge, especially if you're off achievement hunting with friends. And you can also pick a healing item if you have them available. You'll see them pop up pretty regularly. It should be like every 30 minutes or so you'll see a drop for them. I don't want to give exact times because it could be subject to change. And you can trade them with your friends over Steam. But as of the launch, you cannot buy them, and you cannot sell them on the community market. And you also have other common options over here. You can turn your game private or not. You can start the game if you had 2 or more players. And if there were people in the game, you could select them off of the list of names here and mute or kick them. But since we're not going to be playing a multiplayer game, I'm going to head on out of this menu. And let's go back to the single player menu. You're going to see a lot of familiar options here. The scenario, the difficulty, and character, plus your consumable inventory is here. Outbreak comes with a number of scenarios. The campaign mode is kind of the story mode where you're kind of trying to escape a zone and get to the evac point. And to do so, you're going to get attacked by monsters. You're going to maybe solve a couple puzzles, and you're going to work to get, well, I mean, if you're alone, you're on your own. But in multiplayer, you'll work together to try and get through the horrors. In multiplayer, as more people join the game and the difficulty increases, there will be more monsters fighting you. There will also be more items to help offset the additional players in the game. But you'll see the difficulty ramp up both from number of players and actually setting your difficulty setting. The order to play them in is Tutorial, Outbreak, Chasmal, Miasma, and Enkindle. However, you're free to play them in any order. They're all unlocked from the start, and they're all kind of little self-contained adventures at the end of the day. At the end of the day, even though they do directly connect to each other. The Onslaught mode is different from the campaign. Onslaught's that wave-based horde mode that you see in a lot of games, and it's kind of like a fun bonus mode. It never really ends. You can keep going as long as you can survive, but there will be a limit to how long you can survive. Because as you fight off monsters and clear waves, the waves will get more difficult. You will accumulate credits that you can use to buy equipment during those waves. But as you buy from the same station, it becomes more expensive, and eventually it will become prohibitively expensive, which is why you will need to move on from your starting area and keep exploring the map and unlocking new areas. The Onslaught scenarios are remixes from the campaign levels with some changes to make them fit the Onslaught mode. But it should hopefully be a sizable amount of content to keep folks busy, especially with the difficulty. You can bring those consumables into Onslaught mode as well and kind of turn to balance the game in your favor a little bit. Bringing along a Magnum and tossing it on the ground could be useful for very later waves. You never know. It'll also allow you to buy ammo off the walls for guns earlier because you won't actually have to find the gun itself. So you have quite a few options there. There's 3 difficulty modes that ship in Outbreak. We have Normal, Hard, and Biohazard. Normal is the easiest of the difficulties. On Normal, supplies are going to be pretty numerous. There's not going to be a ton of enemies, and the enemies that spawn and chase you endlessly, they won't be in great numbers. But it's still going to be a pretty good challenge because you got to deal with resource management, and and especially when you're alone in single player, it can still be very difficult. Hard just ratchets up the difficulty. Enemies do more damage when they hit you. You'll see them in greater numbers, and there's going to be less equipment on the ground for you. Hard is still, it's definitely a harder version of Normal, and it's still, in my mind, fair. Biohazard is when things get unfair very rapidly. Biohazard is almost, you could call, unbalanced in the game's favor. It increases the number of enemies, they do substantially more damage, and the worst part is that there's going to be a super monster endlessly spawning, so even if you kill it, it's just going to come back within a minute after killing it. And he's going to take a decent amount of damage, and he's going to do good damage, and he's got all the attacks available to him that the enemies can do. So that makes it very difficult. Whereas in Normal and Hard, you can stand your ground and fight off the monsters usually. In Biohazard, you're going to really need to start running and make use of your barricades effectively and really choose when it is the right time to stand and fight and when it's the right time to run for your life. It is intentionally extremely difficult, and it is intentionally unbalanced, and I'm very interested to see successful playthroughs of the scenarios on it. Looking at the characters here, you have 4 unique characters that you can choose from. They each have different attributes, they have different skills, they have different starting equipment, but they all have their own strengths and weaknesses. And it's not just as easy as that green and red text at the bottom there. That's just meant to highlight some of the larger strengths and or weaknesses of the character, but there is no best character in Outbreak. They're each designed to fill a mold, and there's nothing wrong with any of these characters, and I just want to talk about them very quick. Mason is your tank. He has the highest health out of any character. He starts with a advanced handgun, and he's got a very slight damage resistance. He's a great character for your first playthrough because you can take quite a few more hits. But he doesn't really have any other special skills outside of that, and he's just a very basic character. Alendra is a character for advanced players. She starts with a lockpick and is the only character who can get it. She The lockpick allows for very minor sequence breaking in campaign scenarios, and it can break it in your favor sometimes, and sometimes it's not really all that useful. And the example that I'll give you is that Alendra can open up a door in the Outbreak scenario very early that has a lot of extra supplies and equipment in there, where you won't have to backtrack to get to that door, and it'll give you a real edge at the beginning of the scenario. If she's not in your party, you would have to go back later on, much later in the level, go get those supplies. It's going to be a heck of a lot more dangerous, and it's going to take up more of your time. The trade-off, though, for that lockpick means that she is weaker against attacks, ever so slightly, and her health is at a more standard level, whereas Mason's is usually pretty high. So she's definitely for advanced players. Ethan is almost a tank-like character. His unique ability is that he heals better than any other character, so Green Solve will restore more health for Ethan than other characters. He also starts with a healing item. The trade-off, though, is that Ethan is the only character to not start with a weapon. He's kind of a support character in that regard, so taking him into single-player mode can be dangerous, but having that extra healing item can still be useful. And Keys is definitely for advanced players as well, but she, in my opinion, arguably has the strongest skill, you could say. She can have a larger inventory than the other players. She has 6 slots, whereas everyone else has 4. Her health is kind of in line with Alendra's, but the trade-off for that larger inventory is that she cannot combine healing items. And that means that she's a very dangerous choice in single player, because you're limited to any green solves that you find, which are fairly common, and first aid sprays, which are not very common. So healing up as Keys when you're alone can be very dangerous. So that's kind of the readout here. But I definitely recommend that Mason is probably the starter character for most folks, because you start with a handgun, it takes standard handgun ammo, and you can kind of start rolling along pretty easily. And that's kind of a quick overview of the game. So let's hop into a really quick scenario here. I'm not going to have the aim of winning the scenario. I just kind of want to go in there and talk about some other options that are in here. And we'll see how things go once it starts. So you always start a scenario in a centralized area. There's typically some weapons and ammo laying around. You can see here there's some handgun ammo. And there is a pistol on the floor here, in case you did not have one when you started. Mason, as I said, starts out with the advanced pistol here. It does extra damage, fires a little bit slower, and has a smaller magazine, but the ammo efficiency on this thing is pretty good. As such, it's not very common for you to find. Your inventory is very basic. You have your slots where you can hold things, and you can equip, combine, use them, or drop them on the floor, depending on what you want to do. If you're using a gamepad, there are quick button prompts on the bottom right-hand side of the screen there for selecting, combining, equipping, dropping items that let you do it in more of a single button press. And as I'm in there, the game was not paused, and here's our first zombie. And he's actually a pretty strong one. And he's going to do some damage before I get him here, because I'm not very prepared. Other buttons here, you can see the lobby view, which in a multiplayer game would show you the inventory of all of your friends in the game. And it would also give you options for kicking them or muting them, depending on if you're the host, or muting if you're a normal player, or yourself for your microphone. You have access to the options menu as well, with most of those options from the first menu, and reconfiguring your controls here as well. So a lot of the basic stuff is right there. You can reload your weapons, either by firing when you're out of ammo if you have other ammo. You can do it from the inventory, which is the quickest way, which is just combining. Or you can manually reload out of the inventory by using, while aiming, hit the inventory key. That's typically not the way you want to reload, though, because it freezes you in place. So you always want to reload through your inventory if you can. It's one of those fun little shortcuts. The game uses tank controls, as I said. When you aim to attack, you cannot move. You can turn your guy. And there's a little bit of auto-aim to kind of help you pick the closest target here as well. And we'll take out this last monster before we move on here. Now, you also have access to a map, which will show you a pretty good chunk of the area. You've got a legend on the bottom left-hand side of the screen here as well. And it'll kind of help you determine where to go. You also have your objective and your current location in the upper left-hand corner here. And when you get an objective, it comes up on the screen and it's pretty clear, which we need to investigate the lounge. Oh, look, a shotgun. and you can use your map to find a lounge. The other thing I want to show you is barricades. Barricades are meant to buy you some time. You put them down, and the zombie can't get through them. If the zombie hits it enough, he will eventually break that barricade, and they will time out over time. Every barricade you build is more expensive than the last one. They take longer to recharge, and over time they will become so long to recharge that they will become less usable. So that's just something to keep in mind here. You can also walk around and inspect items. When you see that exclamation point in your character, you can hit the A button to either expect something or pick up an item. And that's usually your indication that there's something to do here or there. And they tend to be color-coded. You can see here that there are some zombies around the level as well, and you'll see the ones that kind of just come after me endlessly here. So we'll just go up here and go to this lounge area. The other thing, too, is that there's fog of war every now and then, and when you walk through it, it becomes visible for you. And luckily there was no zombie in here, and I can just take this keycard, which awards me a new objective. And that's kind of the flow of the gameplay, is you'll get vague objectives that tell you to go to general areas, and you kind of have to figure out what you're doing based on that, use your map, and find out where to go. There's no waypoints, really. There's no line showing you exactly where to go, and the game is kind of trust you to discover it on your own. With the set-piece zombies, sometimes it's better to not even fight them. This guy, if I wouldn't have walked close to him, probably would have never came after me. And you could do the whole level without ever setting that guy off. The other thing to keep an eye out for, too, is written logs that are on the ground, which kind of tell you a little bit of background information on what's happening. But as I said again, you're not safe while reading these logs, and they're very dangerous. So, let's see how this goes here. And that's kind of the gameplay for the campaign in a nutshell. You'll experience some classic survival horror tropes. You'll go around areas, and you'll fight some big monsters. And you'll find sometimes you can't see what's ahead of you. You'll open up a door, and then you'll suddenly get attacked by something a little bit more advanced, and you'll forget to reload your inventory. And this may not end well for me. But I managed to defeat him. Except there's always another one on your tail. Yes, that is a dangerous combination. Fire and green acid sounds like it could explode. Yeah, I'll just play through a little bit more here. Show you a few more areas. Here's a pro tip. Oh, there's also a zombie there. There is a better shotgun over here for when you find yourself in this scenario. That should always be there for you, which is the combat shotgun. And it holds more ammo. The spread on the shots is also a bit tighter as well. You'll also notice that the camera sometimes becomes fixed, it sometimes zooms in and out, depending on how things go. And that just kind of helps immerse you, but it also adds that level of difficulty that as it zooms in, you can see less. You might run into a zombie like that. Let's see if I can get both these guys at once for us here. That was a mistake. I made a huge mistake. This could be the end. Not yet. I think that's probably a good place to kind of stop for now. So that's kind of the game in a nutshell. Definitely thank you for watching this live stream, and I appreciate if you check out the game. I'm looking forward to seeing folks streaming online and playing some multiplayer together. If you find yourself having a successful Biohazard level scenario clear, I would love to see a video for it as well. Outbreak is going to release on Steam today, January 17th, which should hopefully happen in the next hour or two. It's going to retail for $14.99, and there's going to be a 30% discount for the launch week. So it'll bring it down to about $10.49, but Steam will change the price based on the currency as well, so it could be different in other parts of the world. It allows offline single-player gameplay, up to 4-player online co-op. Cloud servers mean that you're not using P2P connections, so you should hopefully not have any NAT issues or firewall issues playing with friends. There's full voice chat in multiplayer, and there's text chat as well if you choose to use either of those. Um, and we are hopefully going to be targeting other platforms later on this year. Hopefully, looking at the Xbox One and the Windows Store. But there's no firm deadlines on those versions, as development is still very early. So it could still be quite a while before those come out. So I definitely encourage you to give Outbreak a try. You can check us out on Steam. Feel free to follow this Twitch channel, follow us on Twitter, and we'll hopefully have more news as time goes on. If you have any thoughts or feedback for future enhancements, or if you notice a bug or anything, please post it on the Steam forums, and I'm very interested to hear from you. And I can certainly make no promises on new features or content, but I'm definitely interested to hear what the community wants so that I can prioritize development based on that. And as I said at the beginning of the stream, this game is designed to be kind of the first in a series of projects. If I can find an audience that's interested in this type of game, and sales go well, this will hopefully provide an opportunity to work on more advanced versions and hopefully 3D versions, and bring kind of back that classic survival horror feel to new games going forward, and help revitalize this portion of the genre a little bit. So definitely tell your friends about Outbreak, and I appreciate that you took the time to listen to this stream. Thank you.